as we endeavor to be good stewards of the resources that you've given us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman Perkle. First order of business, committee, is we have to approve our rules. You should have a copy of them on your desk or been given them to you. If you have a question, I'll try to answer it. If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of our committee rules. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of our committee rules, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I think the ayes have it. Thank you. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Secretary, what's your last name? Meeks, and we'll present the budget.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we will turn it over to you for an explanation of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, I'm going to go through this line sheet as fast as I can, so y'all hold on. Section 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, we're going to get rid of all of that. We're going to have a deduction of $14.3 million. All in favor? I was just making sure y'all are awake. I know that they're integral partners in what we do, and we wouldn't do that to them because they could return the favor. So if it's okay with y'all, I'm not going to go through line by line. House Bill 18 is what we're looking at. Amended fiscal year 2023 budget was set by a revenue estimate of $32.56 billion. An increase of $2.36 billion, or 7.8% of the original FY23 budget. This is the second year in a row that the state has experienced tremendous growth in the amended budget. Our state has a long history of conservative fiscal management, and this year is no exception. With the additional funds that are being recognized in this budget, the House joins the governor on the wise use of tax dollars with one-time needed investments in technology, capital, and economic development projects, as well as human capital investment. There are many areas where we agree with the governor in this budget, including $166 million for the large economic development projects receiving regional economic business assistance REBA grants, including Hyundai and Rivian projects. $105 million to implement the state-of-the-art electronic medical record system to support medical education and training at the Medical College of Georgia. $92 million for the state reinsurance program to help lower health insurance premiums. $51.4 million for emergency repairs, maintenance, repair, and renovations, and life safety and security upgrades at our correctional facilities. $35.7 million to establish the Rural Workforce Housing Fund, and $34.6 million to establish a new statewide public safety radio network to achieve statewide interoperability for the Departments of Public Safety and the Department of Natural Resources. We support the governor and have made adjustments to other recommendations based on later data that we've gathered. An adjustment of $100 million to the one-time homeowner tax relief grant program to provide for maximum exemption on the assessed home value allowed by our Constitution. Nearly $1 billion of property tax relief will still be provided to Georgians statewide. A $56.2 million savings by shifting the funding for the Rivian construction to FY24 while still funding the design for the training center in our current 23 budget. Reduced funding for a slower rollout of the state properties demolition funds with $15 million remaining there. And recognizing a nearly $1 billion in federal money provided to school systems for learning loss programs and repurposing state funds to enhance security grants. Recognizing that the amended budget presents an opportunity to capture funds that will not be utilized in the current year by one department that can be used in another, we found additional one-time savings or true-ups, you've heard that a lot this morning, based on projections that do not reflect a reduction in staffing or services. There are funds that may be repurposed in other departments, including $29.5 million in unutilized One Georgia grants, more than $10 million in DOE formula true-ups, $4 million in dual enrollment true-up based on projections, and $3.5 million in the tuition equalization grants based on the balance and the projections. Now, how did we spend all that money we found? The committee feels very strongly about honoring our commitment to state employees. To that end, you'll see a number of items across several agencies where funds were added to ensure that the $5,000 cost of living adjustment provided in the original FY23 budget is funded equitably across state government. Providing for state retirees is a priority of this committee and many of you. The budget provides $14.5 million to provide for an additional benefit adjustment to our current year's retirees. We consider this funding an opening bid and look forward to working with our colleagues in the Senate to see if we may provide a greater adjustment. There are a number of items in this budget to be proud of, and I'm thankful for all the hard work of our subcommittee chairs and our subcommittee members. We fleshed out a lot of funding for a lot of priorities. Let me just highlight by our subcommittee. We'll start with economic development and our chair, Penny Houston. There's a $5 million to match the $65 million federal grant for the Georgia Artificial Intelligence Manufacturing Project benefiting Southwest Georgia. This is a great opportunity for our state, and I've heard from many of you who were interested and wanted to support this project. $1 million will be matched by the Senate to complete the expansion of the Savannah Convention Center begun in FY23. The Convention Center is an economic engine of our coastal Georgia, hosting more than 160 events and 200,000 visitors annually, and supporting 28,000 tourism and hospitality jobs. We placed $766,812 in the Department of Agriculture to implement the Georgia Raw Dairy Act we passed last session. $650,000 for Savannah Logistics Innovation Center to support the logistics and supply chain industry. Give me my water. Sorry. We don't have long. Now to our Education Subcommittee Chairman Matt Dubnik. The House version of the budget adds $23 million to school security grants, bringing the total amount funded to $138.8 million, and increasing these grants from $50,000 per school to $60,000, with the intention that the systems have the flexibility to allocate those funds as they deem necessary. $3.3 million in Department of Education to equip construction industry programs. These simulators support the construction career pathway, and students earn credentials as heavy equipment operators ready to enter the workforce. There's a waiting list of these schools wanting these simulators, and the House version provides 32 additional simulators statewide. $1.25 million for school systems to implement character education programs. That's a matching program, which will be $50,000 per school, and they have to come up with 50 also. General Government, Chairman Marcus Wiedauer. The House version provides $500,000 for the Department of Labor to fund repairs and renovations statewide. We know that the new commissioner has a need for additional funding, and we received that yesterday. And we look forward to working with our colleagues in the Senate to address the agency's immediate needs. We put $4.9 million with the Secretary of State for one-time elections, equipment replacement, and upgrades. Replaces batteries, implement secure ballot image capture library, and ballot tracking. Health Subcommittee, Chair Darlene Taylor. The House supports the governor's recommendation to recognize the increased expenses the state health benefit plan and adjust the employer contribution rate accordingly. We've also heard from our local school systems about the one-year increase to the employer contribution rate for the non-certified school employees. The House version provides a $100 million infusion into the state health benefit plan and reflects a 3-year phase-in of the increase to the employer contribution per member per month rate for non-certified school employees, effective January 1st, 24. The House also provided $250,000 for a new licensure category for adult residential mental health programs as established in HB 1069 from 2022, sorry. Higher Education, Chairman David Knight. We've added $5.7 million for Middle Georgia State University aviation program to purchase 8 aircraft and construct T hangars. $405,716 in student finance to support the Commission's operations and student access to financial aid programs. We're asking them to stand up several new programs, and they need additional resources. Human Resources, Chairman Katie Dempsey. The House supports DBHDD with $4 million to fund a DBHDD treatment mall renovation in Augusta, $2.6 million to support private psychiatric beds for adults and youth, and $1.9 million to restore beds at the Georgia Regional Hospital. We also put $100,000 for technology infrastructure and environmental adaptations for students enrolled in inclusive post-secondary education program called IPSE. We know that additional funds, unfortunately, are needed to support children in foster care, and the House is providing $5 million to DHS for alternative housing options for youth with complex needs. Public Safety, Chairman Bill Hitchens. We've added $5 million in additional funds for technology, life safety, and security projects with the Department of Corrections. We've added $4 million for the Georgia Crime Victims Emergency Fund to offset decline in probation fees and the reduction in that fund. $3.5 million for the GBI to maintain the Georgia Crime Information Center, GCIC, and offset fee collection there also. $2.4 million for to upgrade security at our 48 domestic violence shelters across the state. An additional $2 million in one-time funds to these shelters to offset federal funds decline. And finally, our Transportation Chair, Chairman Clay Perkle. We've added an additional $7.8 million for additional airport aid. There's a request for over $53 million in this program. We've added $3 million to continue our upgrades to state-owned short-line railroads to Class 2. And we've added $25 million in motor fuel funds for increased costs for maintenance, service contracts, and materials. Was that better than running through line by line? No? All right, well, I'll start that. I want to take this opportunity before I take questions just to thank the budget staff, Christine Murdoch, all the crew, and all of you. they started with me about 3 days after I was named to this position, and I think we've spent, I don't know how many hours together, but thank y'all for trying to get me up to speed. I guess we'll find out how up to speed I am. And also thanks to y'all for being patient and for helping me along the way. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for your great work on presenting your first amended budget as your tenure as chair. Do we have any questions from the committee? Leader Beverly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your presentation. I have several questions around $100 million. I won't go too far.
Okay.
But I have some serious questions. Number one, can you explain the shift of the $100 million to SHBP, and how has that increase change been phased in? How do we phase that money in?
So what we've, doing that immediately would make the SHBP a lot more solvent, but we heard from all our, not all of them, but a lot of the superintendents asking for help there. To phase that in over time would make the SHBP fund have more liability. So we decided to take that $100 million and put it in there and hopefully make it last a little longer, so we don't run into a problem where we have to pump a lot more money in there. So we've got the money right now to do that. So hopefully that's what we would like to do.
Is there do you allocate the money from sort of HTRG? Where's it going? How's that money being allocated to the gas tax suspension and the other buckets that we have? Like, there's no allocation of where this money is actually going. It's just a sort of omnibus $100 million, but where is it actually going into each bucket that it's being allocated to?
So I'll try to follow your question. I'm not sure if I totally follow it, but for instance, the 100, it's easy for us to say that, we gathered $100 million in our new projection of what the homestead exemption refund will cost, which in the budget, the original budget was $1.1 billion. So our projection shows is $1 billion. So that was 100. Let's put 100 in the state health benefit plan. That's one way we did it. And if you're asking how do we line up all the others, I don't know that you can dollar for dollar line where one went to the other. For example, the cut in education that we made, or the change that we made from the governor's budget on the learning loss, $25 million he was putting toward there. That is going to stay in education. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, it does, because I'm thinking about the sort of gas tax and also the tax rebate, and then the property tax. Like that money, I don't know where that money is actually going, and doesn't reflect it in the budget. But I hear talk that there is, we're going to have a tax rebate. There's going to be a gas tax suspension, and then there's going to be a property tax reduction, because we're giving money. And I'm just trying to figure out what amount of money is going where, because it's not immediately clear.
Okay, so $1 billion is going in, and you'll have to tell me where it's reflected, is reflected to replace the motor fuel taxes in what's in the document. And the refund, we will have to vote on legislation for that to occur.
Okay. I have
the income tax refund.
That's Leader Beverly, if you'll suspend for a minute, just in terms of the time, the Rules Committee Chairman has entered the room, and I know at 9 o'clock he would like to have this room, and we've got a couple more questions, so quickly, sir.
No problem. So the last question I have for now is, last year the governor vetoed the language around money that would go to Medicaid enrollment, and it was around $700,000. And so what I would ask is that this year, and it was right before the primary, I would ask this year that we would change the language to include that money back for Medicaid enrollment, about $750,000, and I can give you language for that. But please consider putting that money back, because it really helped children and pregnant women. And it's about $750,000, and I didn't see that reflected from the veto that Governor.
Okay, you'll have to get where that is and the line
I will.
line number that is, and we'll see what we can do.
All right, thanks.
I know we could
Thank you, Leader
definitely
Beverly.
probably reflect that in the 24 if we need to.
Chairman Knight.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for what you've done this year. I know it is big shoes that you filled, but pun intended, you got big feet. I know you can fill them.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to echo what you said earlier.
I can take it.
Yeah, but isn't it true, Mr. Chairman, that we have worked tirelessly to look at the amended budget, to look at, as we always do, to make for corrections mid-year, and that we have taken, should I say, money that we have that has been available through true-ups, projections, things that we have originally thought, and we've put those into the most important areas that our citizens of this state are concerned about. And I, for one, want to thank you, especially as we look at health insurance and the cost of that. Going ahead and front-end loading some of those items, looking at making sure that non-certified teachers in our education system are we're paying for that, and just a host of other areas where we've put the resources of this state back into where it makes the most difference for the citizens of the state of Georgia. And I want to say thank you for the hard work, and also another thank you for our budget team for their hard work and detailed analysis on such a huge budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Knight. I fully believe that we are addressing the needs of our people, not only our employees, but our citizens of the state.
Thank you, Chairman Knight. Chairman Dubnik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hatchett, thank you for what you've done for this budget. Thank you for 12-minute and 16-second presentation. That was an hour shorter than our run-through this morning. Chairman Meeks, with the idea that our rules chairman is in the back of the room at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Now's an appropriate time.
Mr. Chairman, I move that House Bill 18 do pass by committee substitute.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you very much.